My dad's harsh words pierced my heart, but it was the doctor's news that changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The moment that stripped away my childhood like a thief in the night. I was reeling, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and fear. The fluorescent lights of the hospital flickered above me, casting harsh shadows on the sterile walls. My head spun as I tried to process Dad's bitter words from earlier that morning. You'll never amount to anything. Didn't he know the half of it? I was sitting in the waiting room, the air heavy with antiseptic and the whispers of worried families. Around me, the hum of nervous conversations filled the air, punctuated by the occasional wail of a child or the distant clatter of medical equipment. My heart raced, skipping like a stone over water. The prospect of bad news coiled tightly in my gut. All I wanted was to feel safe. Instead, I felt exposed, as if the world had stripped me bare. I thought of Mom, lying in that hospital bed, frail and ghostly pale. Her once vibrant laughter was now nothing more than a flickering memory, an echo in the hallways of my mind. I remembered the way she used to tuck me in, the warmth of her presence wrapping around me like a cozy blanket. Now, she was a shadow of herself confined to this place, surrounded by the beeping of machines. Panic surged through me. What if this was it? My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, startling me from my thoughts. A message from Sarah, my best friend. Thinking of you. I'm here if you need me. Her unwavering support was a small beacon in my darkness. A soft smile broke through the storm of emotions, but it was fleeting, replaced quickly by dread. Would I even have the strength to face her? Just then, a doctor stepped into the waiting room. His expression unreadable, a stony mask of professionalism. I felt my heart pound louder. I couldn't decipher his intent, but the way he moved slowly, deliberately, as if wading through treacle set my nerves ablaze. Was this how it felt for everyone else? As if the air had become suffocating? Is it about Mom? The question slipped from my lips before I could stop it. I needed answers. Desperate fingers interlocked, a silent plea for strength. Yes, he replied, his voice steady yet heavy with unspoken weight. The world stopped for a moment. Time slowed, the room spinning into a blur around me. I could hear my heartbeat echoing against the silence, a relentless thud in my ears. This was it, the moment I had been dreading. My fears materializing like an unwelcome intruder. Your mother's condition has worsened, the doctor said carefully, emphasizing his words like a hammer striking an anvil. My breath hitched. Each syllable felt like a brick dropped on my chest. Tears stung my eyes. I fought them back, but they came anyway, cascading down my cheeks, tasting of salt and despair. I felt the warmth of gentle hands on my shoulders, but the touch felt so distant. I wanted to scream, to run, to break free from this nightmare. Why was this happening? The doctor continued, we need to discuss options, but his words faded into the background. My gaze drifted to the waiting families, their faces blurring into unrecognizable shapes. I was losing control. What options? I could feel the walls closing in, the air heavy with impossible decisions waiting to be made. I was afraid. Afraid of what this meant. Afraid of losing Mom. Afraid of becoming the person Dad had always claimed I was. I struggled to find my voice. The weight of impending loss loomed over me. Would I even be able to fight back? Just as the doctor took a step closer, his eyes searching mine, I caught a glimpse of something not in his eyes, but in the corner of the room. A familiar face. A whisper from the past. Mom. I gasped. But it wasn't her. The woman grinned eerily, and my heart sank, chilling dread creeping through my veins. Who was she? And why did she seem to know something I didn't? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My chest tightened, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I forced my gaze away from the stranger. She stood there, strangely ethereal, like a mirage shimmering in the harsh fluorescent light. A specter teasing me with a feeling I couldn't quite grasp. I blinked hard, willing her to disappear, but she remained, an anchor in my spiraling thoughts. Are you okay? The doctor's voice pulled me back, his brow furrowing with concern. In that moment, there was a fleeting softness to his demeanor, an unexpected hint of understanding. It's a lot to take in. I nodded absently, my mind racing like a train derailing. I couldn't shake the image of that woman from my head. Had I seen her before? The answer hovered just out of reach, taunting me. I felt guilt swirl inside. I should be focusing on Mom. I should be fighting for her, but my thoughts were in chaos, locked in a battle against the surrounding silence. Are you alone here? The doctor asked gently, his tone betraying a touch of compassion. The question tore through my heart as I remembered Dad, whose anger had been just as paralyzing as the fear building inside me now. No, I finally managed to whisper, my throat dry. My friend is coming. A lie that felt like a shackle weighing me down. Sarah wasn't here yet, and I was scared of losing the only person in this world who had fought for me, who had been my light through darkness. Good, the doctor replied, giving a small nod before he began to lay out the options. But my mind drifted again, away from his clinical words, spiraling back to that woman, her ominous smile lingering like a ghost. The waiting room was still teeming with anxious energies, the nervous tapping of feet, muffled sobs, and the faint scent of coffee mingled with fear. I glanced at the children huddled in their parents' arms, innocents who still had the luxury of not bearing life's heavy burdens. For a brief moment, a pang of longing struck. I wished to be one of them, to feel the safety of my mother beside me. Just then the stranger stepped forward timidly, her eyes bright but shadowed. You looked like you needed someone. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the clamoring noise in my mind. I don't know you, I replied, my voice quaking. I know, she said, the corners of her mouth twitching, a hint of a smile trying to break through the tension. But when you look at me, you see something familiar. I shivered. What do you mean? Your mother, she replied, a soft crack in her voice that echoed my own loneliness. She is a very special person. We have a connection. My heart quickened, caught between disbelief and intrigue. How could she know Mom? I'm sorry, I said, but I don't understand. Just think about it. You keep looking for signs. Sometimes they come in unexpected ways. I felt a sudden rush of emotions. Anger, disbelief, curiosity, a cocktail of conflicting sentiments that twisted my gut. This lady, whatever her purpose, stirred something in me. Why wouldn't she just disappear like a bad dream? I don't have time for this, I muttered, feeling the familiar weight of everything I was facing crashing down again. I needed to focus on Mom. I need to be with my mom. Perhaps she needs you to understand things you haven't yet, the stranger replied softly, her gaze unwavering. You're not just a child standing by anymore. You have the power to change the narrative. Before I could retort, the doctor interrupted, pulling focus back to the practical realities ahead. Perhaps you should talk to your friend, he suggested, his voice somehow more reassuring now, and take a moment for yourself. As he turned to leave, I felt the tight grip on my heart loosen just a fraction. The fear was still there, insidious and unwelcome, but there was also a small flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, hiding in my shadows were forgotten strengths. The woman remained in my periphery, her presence a lingering mystery, and with every loaded heartbeat, the dread of what lay ahead battled against a budding resolve. I swallowed hard. I would fight for Mom, not just for myself, but for her too. And then, just as I grasped that glimmer of resolve, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Sarah. Relief and panic rushed through me simultaneously. I answered immediately, my heart racing. Sarah? Hey, I just arrived at the hospital. Where are you? Her voice was a balm to my frayed emotions. But before I could respond, the stranger's peculiar smile returned, something deeply knowing in her eyes. You're on the cusp of a revelation, she said softly, but are you ready for what comes next? Uncertainty gripped me in a vice as I heard footsteps approaching, and my breath caught in my throat. This feeling of looming change was suffocating, and I was left staring into an abyss of unknowing. The doctor re-entered, shadows residing in his expression. The weight of his news loomed over all of us. "Let us talk," he said, pulling my focus back to the reality of the moment. But my heart twisted with a silent scream. An overwhelming urge to press my hands against my ears to block out pain, confusion, and impending loss. I was still waiting for clarity, but the air thickened again, threatening to suffocate any thread of hope. "Mom." The single word slipped past my lips without conscious thought, born of desperation. And as I faced both the doctor and the stranger, the connection seemed to pulse between us. A heartbeat of fate that neither of us had expected. The sterile walls of the hospital room closed in around me, the scent of antiseptic mingling with my rising dread. The doctor's eyes shifted between me and the floor, a tumult brewing beneath his composed exterior. "We need to discuss your mother's condition." His voice, usually a soothing balm, felt more like a guillotine, now sharp, final, and terrifying. I felt like I was caught in a torrential downpour, water filling my lungs as I desperately searched for air. My heart raced. Uncertainty gripped me tightly. My gaze darted back to the stranger, who remained a few paces away, her presence an unsettling mix of intrigue and comfort. "Your mom needs immediate care," the doctor continued, still avoiding my gaze. "I'm afraid her condition has progressed more rapidly than we anticipated." The words hung heavy in the air, each syllable weighted with finality, that I could feel the ground shift beneath me, my world tipping into chaos. "What does that mean?" I fought to keep my voice steady, but it cracked as I struggled to comprehend the storm swirling around us. Will she be okay?" There was a pause, heavy and interminable. My heart thundered in my chest. The doctor finally met my eyes, and there was a flicker of compassion wrapped in the grim reality he had to convey. "There are treatment options, but they require immediate action. We need to discuss them." My blood ran cold as fear and desperation collided. "I need to see her," I blurted, as if the very act of demanding it could somehow change the trajectory of our reality. "Of course," he said gently, though his voice was laced with a seriousness that made my stomach drop. "I just need a moment to gather some paperwork, and I'll take you to her." As he turned to leave, the stranger stepped closer, her eyes holding mine with an intensity that unsettled me. "You're stronger than you know," she assured me, a hint of urgency in her voice. "This is your moment to become the force you need to be. Your mom would want that for you." "Do you even know my mom?" I shot back, anger bubbling over my fear. "You keep talking about her as if she's some kind of legend. But you don't know me. You don't know what I'm going through." The stranger's gaze softened, and she took a step back, her hands raised as if to defuse my anger. "I may not know your specific struggles," she responded carefully, her demeanor calm, "but I see the light that connects you both. You possess the same resilience, it's in your eyes. Don't lose sight of that." Her words, like a melody, had a way of anchoring me even amidst the storm that I wanted to argue, to dismiss her as a misguided stranger. But a part of me clung to her assurance, a tiny flicker of warmth amidst the cold reality. Her gaze still lingered, like a tether I hadn't realized I desperately needed. That I exhaled sharply, feeling the constraints of panic begin to slip. I straightened my back, the hollow knock against my chest quieting. "Okay," I whispered, voicing a fragile affirmation to myself as I steeled my resolve. As the doctor returned, the tension was palpable. "Follow me," he instructed, gesturing for me to come with him. I cast one last glance at the stranger, who nodded slightly, a silent wish for strength. Stepping into the sterile bright light of the corridor, I clung to the thought of my mother. Would she still feel like my mom? Or would this harsh filter of illness change her into someone foreign? Each step toward her room was a battle against my emotions, multifaceted and jagged. The doctor pushed open the door, and the world inside morphed into another realm altogether. The rhythmic beeping of machines melded with the quiet rustle of nurses moving about. My mother lay in the bed, fragile and still, yet her presence felt like a beacon. A faint smile graced her lips as she caught sight of me. "Hey, sweetheart," she breathed, her voice a soft whisper, but filled with a warmth that enveloped me. "Mom." I rushed to her side, clutching her hand as if it could bridge the chasm of uncertainty. "I'm right here." Her eyes sparkled with an inner light, even amidst the exhaustion. "I'm so glad you came." As I watched her struggle to keep her eyes open, a wave of emotion crashed over me. I had always seen her as invincible, never considering that she too could be vulnerable. A rush of memories of laughter, love, and comfort flooded my mind. I squeezed her hand, fighting against the impending darkness. "You can't leave me, Mom. Not now." She smiled sadly, squeezing my hand back, and I could see the battle behind her eyes. It was fierce, it was real. "I'll fight for you," she promised softly, "like I always have. Just remember, you're never alone." Those words felt like both a balm and a burden. I wanted to believe her, but an anxious twist in my stomach loomed large. Before I could respond, the doctor intervened again, his voice steady. "I need to ask you both some questions regarding treatment options and your mother's wishes." And just like that, reality began to unravel again. The air thickened with the weight of unspoken fears. My grip on Mom's hand tightened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we decided next would change everything. Could I be strong enough to face the fallout of those decisions? The stranger's words echoed in my mind. The strength was within me. Was I prepared to ignite that strength? Or was I just pretending to hold it? And then, before I could process another thought, a sudden commotion erupted in the hallway outside. A voice that startled me, loud and filled with an anguish I recognized all too well. "What are you doing here? You have no right." My heart dropped as I turned to see my father bursting into the room. Fury and desperation etched deep into his features. My mother's expression slipped from calm to shocked, the newfound haven transforming into a battleground. A wave of nausea washed over me, fracturing the fragile hope I had just clung to. "You shouldn't be here," I exclaimed, instinctively placing myself between him and Mom. "Stay out of this. This is between your mother and me," he shouted, and I felt the walls closing in as anger crackled in the air like electricity. In that moment, my heart raced in sync with the oncoming tempest. The ominous unraveling had begun, and I feared the revelations that awaited us all. The whirlwind of emotions surged around me, intensifying in the shadow of my father's presence. The space that had felt warm and filled with love moments prior now brimmed with conflict and dread. I could see my mother's eyes widen, reflecting equal parts surprise and fear. I wanted to shield her, wrap her in the protection of our fragile moment, but I felt like a ship lost at sea, battling the storm of my father's anger. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "You have no idea what she is going through." He stepped forward, fury etched into his features. "I'll tell you what she is going through. She is manipulating you. Like always. Trying to play the victim, and you're too naive to see it." My breath caught in my throat, the words like knives aimed right at my heart. I felt them twist inside me. "You don't get to talk about her like that, especially not now." The doctor stood back, sensing the tension rising, but I could feel his eyes studying our dynamic, looking for a glimmer of resolution amidst the chaos. "I think it would be best if we all took a step back for a moment," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "This isn't just about feelings. It's about your mother's health." "No," I shot back, desperation creeping in. "This is exactly about her feelings, about what she needs from us right now." "Enough," my father snapped, his voice booming through the small hospital room. "You're still a child, and you don't understand the consequences of her choices. You don't know what it means to struggle." Each accusation felt like a stab, but the worst part was the truth that lingered in them. I did feel like a child, lost and unprepared for the tumultuous waves crashing against me. My gaze shifted to my mother, noticing the way her hands trembled, the pallor of her skin fragile and translucent like a wisp of smoke. "Dad, please," I implored, the urgency of my mother's situation gnawing at me. "This is not about you or your beliefs. This is about her. She needs us together, not this." I gestured helplessly towards the tension filling the space, that my father's face twisted in disdain. Yet for a moment, I caught a flash of vulnerability beneath his anger. "You think you know what she needs? You're only seeing half of the picture." His voice softened just a fraction, revealing a crack in his bravado. "You think she hasn't suffered? That I haven't suffered?" A mixture of pain and disbelief flooded my senses. I had spent so long grappling against his harshness, wondering how he could remain so blind to my mother's struggles. But now I was seeing him fight against his own demons. It didn't matter. We were all drowning in our bitterness, and I was afraid the oxygen would run out before we could emerge. Did I end that haze? My mother whispered, "Stop it. Both of you." Her voice barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the tempest like a lighthouse beacon. "Please, I can't take this anymore." Everything froze at her words, and sudden tears pricked my eyes. I had been too focused on the fight, too lost in the tumult to notice the toll it was taking on her. My heart ached to see her, so weakened, yet summoning every ounce of strength she had left. She took a shaky breath, steadying herself as she gestured for us to come closer. "Listen," she said, "what we need right now is understanding. Love. Not this." Her gaze swept between us. "This needless fighting. You're both my everything, and I can't bear to see you at odds when I need you most." It was like a dam had broken, all the unspoken feelings flooding to the surface. The tension tempered, yet the air was thick with unsaid words and unresolved conflict. My father looked momentarily stricken, and beneath the hard shell, I saw the flicker of regret. "We need to talk about the options," the doctor spoke again, but my heart was reeling as I stared at my mother. I barely registered his words, a soft murmur against the backdrop of my racing thoughts. "We need to discuss what she wants moving forward." "What I want," my mother began, though her voice shook, a testament to her exhaustion, "is to live. I want to fight, but I need both of you to be on my side, not fighting with each other." The reality of her words hit me in waves, drowning out every shallow worry I had. I could feel the inkling of intimacy from the stranger's words earlier, the notion of strength that lived within me, and it coiled around my heart now, urging me to step forward. "I'm here, Mom," I said with trembling sincerity. "I won't let you down." But then, an unexpected flare of resistance bubbled within me as I turned to my father, who wrestled with emotions of his own. "And you need to think about what it means to be a family. We can't go on like this." For the first time, he faltered. The storm inside him subsided a tad, and I could see he was grappling with something deeper than mere anger. Maybe, just maybe, there was a possibility for healing. But before we could explore that fragile thread, the atmosphere shifted yet again. The intercom crackled, and a nurse's voice echoed through the room, announcing that visiting hours were ending soon. I felt my heart clench. "No," I whispered, panic rising. "Mom, I can't leave." The doctor stepped forward, laying a hand gently on my shoulder. "It's critical we have this conversation later. You can stay as long as you want, but I need to ensure your mother's care is prioritized." I met my mother's eyes, catching a glimmer of hope amidst the storm. "Fight for me," I mouthed, and she nodded, an understanding passing between us, one blessed moment shared before the world exploded again. As the nurse ushered my father toward the door, I felt a surge of urgency. "Wait," I called out, not sure if I was ready for any potential truce but desperate to avert any further pain. He hesitated, glancing back, and in that slight pause, I saw hope glimmer amidst the anguish. "Let us talk about this later," I said softly, my voice cracking but filled with resolve. The door clicked shut behind him, and I faced my mother, whose eyes now glimmered with unspoken words. "I believe we can do this," she whispered. "Together." But just as I leaned closer, the doctor's phone chimed. He frowned at the screen, finding an urgent message before looking back up at us, his expression shifting. "I'm sorry, but there's a concern with your mother's condition. We may need to act sooner than we anticipated." My heart plummeted as I grasped her hand tighter, the weight of impending choices crashing down on me. We were caught in the eye of the storm, and as new fears rushed forward, the fight wasn't over, it was only just beginning. The sound of the doctor's words echoed in the room, drowning out the rhythmic beeping of machines and the distant murmur of patients outside. My heart raced, intertwining dread with the flickering embers of hope that had struggled to rise between my parents. I felt like a marionette on fraying strings, each tug and pull creating new depths of despair. "Sooner?" I repeated, my voice a shaky whisper. "What do you mean? What's going on?" The doctor glanced at my mother, whose face had grown paler, her eyes wide with fresh worry. "I can't disclose all the details just yet," he said carefully, "but we need to run additional tests. We suspect that there may be complications that require immediate attention." I watched my mother's hands tremble against the stark white sheets. I felt the consciousness of the world pressing in around us. Each passing moment weighted with unearned gravity. "Mom," I began, unsure how to navigate this new terrain. Just let them help you. Please. She nodded, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. I'm ready, she said, though her voice cracked. I yearned to take her pain away, to barter my years of life for her strength, but all I could offer was my presence. The doctor shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware of the emotional waves crashing around us. I need to prepare for the tests, he said gently, but I'll be back as soon as I have more information. I barely heard him as he left the room, the door clicking shut behind him, sealing us in a bubble of uncertainty. My heart raced, the silence that followed buzzing in my ears. Can we fight this? I asked, my voice trembling as I reached for my mother's hand. Her grip tightened, and for one moment, all the hurt exchanged between my parents faded away. We can try, sweetheart, she replied, her voice a melodic whisper of courage. We will try. But even as I clung to her words, the fear gnawed at the edges of my resolve. I was desperate for her to believe it, to truly believe that we could rise above this, but doubt curled around my heart like ivy. In that moment of shared silence, I caught a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a nurse passing by our doorway. She stopped and offered a warm, soft smile, her eyes crinkling at the edges. You're doing a great job, keeping her spirits up, she said kindly before hurrying down the hall. Her small act of kindness was a lifeline in the storm, and I found a flicker of strength igniting within me. Perhaps it wouldn't take one grand act to make a stand, but the small, steadfast echoes of love that grew in moments like these. Mom, you're the strongest person I know, I said, my voice steadier now. You fought so hard. We can't give up now. She smiled at me, that familiar spark glinting in her eyes, and I found myself wishing desperately that my father could see it too. But as I glanced towards the door, uncertainty threaded through my resolve. Would he understand? Would he even care? The emptiness of the room swallowed my next thoughts, as the specter of my father loomed larger. I longed for the connection we had once shared, for the shared laughter we used to echo off the walls of our home, a home where the air was thick with love, not resentment. That a nurse entered again, breaking my reverie, and I shifted as she fiddled with my mother's for, adjusting the flow. You're in good hands, she said reassuringly. The doctor will take great care of you, I promise. I nodded, grateful for her warmth, but the truth was I didn't feel hopeful. Every tick of the clock seemed to echo the uncertainty of the situation we found ourselves in. I turned towards the window, staring out at the sun gradually dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I remembered the last time we had seen the sun together, how we sat in our backyard, my mother's laughter mingling with the summer breeze. Those moments felt ungraspable now, slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. That as the nurse finished and left the room, I took a seat beside my mother once more. You'll get through this, I repeated softly. We all will. Together. Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears, and the air around us felt heavy with unresolved feelings. And just as I began to believe it, just as a fragile strand of hope began to weave through us, the door swung open again, and my father stepped in, his expression unreadable. We were locked into an unexpected silence, an invisible barrier threading between us again. He barely glanced at my mother, and a shiver of frustration coursed through me. What are you doing here? I asked before I could stop myself. The words hung in the air like smoke, choking the fragile calm. I'm here to talk, he replied, visibly tense, the frustration boiling just beneath the surface. There are things we need to address about her treatment. Reasons we can't ignore. My heart sunk. Is that all you care about? I shot back, fueled by a mixture of fear and anger. Can't you see she needs your support? Not your accusations? His eyes darkened, and I felt the room heating up again. That storm gathering in the corners, every wound reopening. You don't know what you're asking for. He raised his voice, but my mother interrupted him with a quiet, relentless strength. Stop, she said, her voice firm but hoarse. Enough of this fighting. I don't want it. I can't handle it. My father paused, a flicker of realization crossing his face, but he quickly masked it. You think this is easy for me? He retorted. You don't understand. I'm trying, I said, desperation clawing at my throat. We're all trying. But it didn't stop there. Through the turbulence of our confrontation, I glimpsed something else, a realization creeping in around the edges of my father's hardened exterior. As he opened his mouth to speak again, the tension froze, thickening the air like fog. And then the intercom crackled to life again. "Doctor, we need you in room 305 now." Alarm raced through me as I looked into my mother's eyes. A flicker of panic. "What is happening?" I breathed, my voice trembling as I turned back to my father. But in that moment, I glanced past him, catching sight of the nurses huddled outside. Sudden urgency rippling through the corridor. I felt my heart drop into the pit of my stomach. That my father's face twisted in simultaneous confusion and concern. "What's wrong?" A silent question hung between us now. One that could dissolve our defenses if we allowed it. "Something is happening in the hospital?" I couldn't help but ask, dread clenching me tight. And just as the pieces began to fall into place, we were hit with the cold shock of unfamiliar chaos as another doctor rushed into the room, calling for assistance, and I felt the ground beneath me shift unsteadily. "What's going on?" I cried, standing abruptly, desperate to bridge the widening chasm of uncertainty and fear. My heart raced, and in that moment, we were swept into a new storm altogether, this one beyond our comprehension, a revelation that would thrust us deeper into the heart of our struggle. The weight of impending decisions loomed like a specter over us, stitching our fates together amidst the unraveling threads of despair and possibility. The chaos unfolded rapidly, the doctor's words blurring into the background of my escalating panic. Colleagues rushed in, thin faces taut with urgency, their whispers stinging my ears like the sharp sting of a cold wind sweeping through my heart. I felt my mother's grip loosen in response to the rising tension, as though whatever strength she had left was being siphoned into the maelstrom brewing within our small room. "Please, what is happening?" Desperation clawed at my voice, amplifying my fear into a raw, trembling ache. My father shifted beside me. He seemed equally unclear, his expression a mix of concern and confusion, almost as if it registered for the first time how precarious our situation had become. The head doctor, her brow furrowed, took only a moment to orient herself before directing her gaze toward us. "I need you both to stay calm," she said, her voice steady but penetrating. "We're facing a critical decision regarding your mother's care." My heart raced as I searched her eyes for reassurance, for the hope I so desperately needed to cling to. Instead, I saw the unmistakable weight of gravity, the type of gravity that had a way of rooting fear deep within, and wearing down the most resilient of souls. That I felt myself pull away from my father, needing space, needing the air thick with his silence to dissipate. I turned toward my mother, her pale form framed by the stark white sheets, and yet there it was again, a flicker of warmth in her gaze. Even amidst uncertainty, she managed a smile, a small beacon in the darkness that threatened to engulf us all. "What kind of decision?" I probed, my voice barely a whisper, as tension gripped the air like a vice. The doctor hesitated, assessing our fragile emotional state before responding. "Due to the possible complications we suspect, we believe it might be necessary to perform an emergency intervention. It's a risk, but it may be her only chance." Panic surged through me, threatening to choke my breath. I met my mother's eyes. Though they shimmered with tears, they also held an unyielding spirit that anchored me momentarily. "What kind of intervention?" I asked, needing clarity as the words danced on the tip of my tongue. Tangled with dread, that a murmur of hushed voices floated around us as the urgency escalated. And the doctor began to explain, but I could hardly focus. My world narrowed to the magnitude of that moment. The prospect of losing my mother pressed heavily against my chest, squeezing, suffocating. "Tell me there are other options," I said, the anguish breaking free. "Anything but that. There must be something, some other why. Oh, you need to trust us," the doctor interjected gently, her steady gaze contradicting the chaos surrounding us. "We're here to fight for her. We can do everything possible to make sure she has the best chance of recovery. But we need your consent." My father's voice cut through, sharper than I expected. "Isn't there more time? Are we sure about the diagnosis? What about waiting for the tests?" The words fluttered in the air like a pale shadow, igniting a flame of frustration alongside the flickering embers of hope I had tried to keep alive. "This isn't about you," I snapped, the heat of emotions spilling over. "It's about her. Don't you understand? We can't sit here and wait for bad news." My father recoiled as if I struck him. His hurt morphed into anger, echoing the storm unfurling within me. You think shouting will change anything? He hissed, but I tuned him out, fully focused on my mother. I knelt by her bedside, taking her hand in mine. Her touch was cool, a whisper of warmth ebbing away from me. Mom, please, I need you to tell me what you want. It felt burdensome placing that choice on her, but I had to give her the power. I had to believe she would fight, combating the rising tide of uncertainty. She squeezed my hand, a fleeting reminder of her courage. I want to fight, she said. Words so faint yet indomitable. I've always wanted that. As her eyes clung to mine, unwavering in their resolve, I turned back to the doctor, forcing the words through my turbulent heart. Do what you have to do. Please just do everything you can. The doctor nodded, gentle but firm. We'll do our best. We'll start preparations immediately. But before she could step away, the clamor of gurneys rattling down the hall broke through urgent voices overlapping as panic escalated. A wave of commotion swept through, and my blood ran cold. Something was wrong beyond our room, and I felt an unsettling shift deep within my gut. What is happening? I shouted amidst the turmoil, but no one seemed to hear me. The nurses and doctors were focused, intent on their mission, but the energy buzzing through the corridor felt electric, charged with foreboding. I in that moment, another figure emerged, the same nurse who had smiled earlier, her eyes wide and searching, filled with a wild sort of fear unlike anything I'd seen. We're evacuating this floor, she called out urgently. Evacuating? My heart stuttered as uncertainty wrapped its hands around my throat. What do you mean? Before another word could escape, two doctors burst into our room, their voices a cacophony of command. We need to move you and your mother to the emergency ward. All at once, time expanded and contracted. The air grew thick with tension as the nurses began to organize the gurney and equipment. But a new realization pierced through the frenzy of emotions. This was not just for my mother anymore. My father grasped my shoulder, the connection shocking and tangible, yet suffocating. What is going on? What is happening outside? I couldn't meet his eyes. The weight of our quarrel still raw but overshadowed by a new, undeniable fear. Mom. I cried out, desperation clawing at my throat. We need to go. We can't stay here. As the medical team prepared, I looked into my mother's eyes, which were now brimming with a tempest of emotions. I felt the intensity of the moment pulling us all together, yet fluttering us apart, unraveling bonds that had frayed too easily. Suddenly, just as they were about to wheel her out, the lights flickered violently, the overhead chaos reverberating through the walls, and I grasped my mother's hand desperately. The world felt like it was spiraling, but for the first time that day, the thread of connection between us ignited with a promise. And then, as quickly as it began, the emergency lights blazed to life, the air charged thick with the tremors of uncertainty echoing the urgency pulsing through our hearts. What lay ahead remained shrouded in darkness, a revelation perched on the edge of impending change. As they wheeled my mother out, I turned back to my father, a flash of unspoken understanding passing between us, a fragile truce in a world that felt ever more precarious. But as I stepped forward, ready to follow, the ground rolled beneath my feet, shaking loose everything I thought I knew as I faced the chaos of the unknown, my heart heavy with both fear and an unexpected flicker of hope. The emergency ward loomed ahead, an industrial maze of sterile white lights and echoing voices, an amplified heartbeat in a world that felt like it was plunging deeper into shadow. As we moved, the rush of medical personnel flanking us felt both protective and suffocating, an urgent current that pulled in every direction. I tried to focus, to absorb the reality of the situation. However, the fear coursing through me felt like a relentless wave, crashing down and dragging me under. Once inside, the cacophony intensified. Gurneys raced past, nurses with clipboards scanned the chaos, and doctors shouted orders. I felt my breath quicken, the urgency was palpable, an electric charge that sent shivers down my spine. I turned to look at my mother, now being prepped for a new onslaught of procedures. Her eyes, usually so bright and reassuring, floated in and out of awareness as the medical team swarmed around her. Mom, I'm here, I whispered, desperately trying to anchor her to the moment, to me. But her gaze seemed distant, clouded by the flurry of commotion. I stood almost paralyzed, cradling her hand, feeling the coolness creeping back in as they inserted IVs and checked her vitals. Each beep of the machines felt like a countdown, counting the seconds that slipped through our fingers like grains of sand. Let us go over her medical history. A voice broke through the tumult, piercing the fog of my mind. It was a younger physician, his face earnest and urgent as he filled out charts and reviewed files. What are her allergies? Previous surgeries? I need to know everything. As responses flew around me, fragments of conversations and the shadows of uncertainty drew closer, enveloping my heart in their icy grip. Suddenly, I was struck by a thought that paralyzed me. Had my father's outburst earlier painted our fate in darker colors? Had I lost my moment to be there for my mother amid our argument? The weight of guilt settled heavily in my chest, choking off my air. But there she was, my mother, a frail figure surrounded by a cyclone of professionals. In that moment, she turned her gaze toward me, a flicker of recognition breaking through the haze. You need to trust them, she said, her voice barely audible over the bustling chaos. Please don't lose hope for me. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears as I nodded, my heart aching for her reassurance to cut through my dread. Next to me, I could feel my father shift nervously, reminding me of the fragile thread of our relationship drawn taut by fear and a million unspoken worries. Then, as if reading my thoughts, he leaned closer, tension coiling around us, and whispered, I'm sorry for yelling earlier. It's just his voice trailed off, uncertainty lacing his words. I don't know how to handle this. Neither do I confessed, my eyes darting back to my mother, her form now obscured by a flurry of activity. But we have to try. Tension melted, however briefly, as we stood side by side, two people who had been at war, now united by the storm that threatened to take everything from us. The moment barely settled, though, before chaos erupted once again. A sudden urgent alert echoing through the ward startled us as a team of doctors sprinted past, their frantic footsteps a terrifying signal of something amiss. What just happened? My heart raced, and I felt my father's hand grasp mine, both of us hovering on the edge of fear. I don't know, I gasped, adrenaline coursing through me. But we need to stay focused on Mom. A glint of movement caught my eye, a young nurse, her brow creased with concern, rushed by, and for a moment her eyes met mine. Without breaking stride, she leaned slightly closer, whispering in a hurried tone, Stay back. Something is wrong on this floor. Then she was gone, lost in the whirl, leaving only the echoes of uncertainty hanging in the air. Fear settled in my bones. What was happening? My mind raced with the possibilities, each more catastrophic than the last. Would we have to leave again? Would my mother receive the care she needed? Or were we trapped in a grim twist of fate that would throw us all into further chaos? Taking a deep breath, I turned to my father. We can't let fear consume us. We have to be ready for anything. He nodded, but the hints of panic flickered in his gaze, a reflection of my own. I felt the ground shift beneath us once more, instability clawing at the corners of our lives. And then, without warning, the lights flickered once again, plunging us momentarily into darkness before flickering back to life. The murmurs across the ward grew restless, shadows gathering in the corners like whimpering ghosts, and my heart plummeted as the air buzzed with mounting tension. Attention! We are initiating a lockdown for your safety. Please remain calm. The announcement reverberated through the room, the implication of those words heavy, lingering in my mind like a storm cloud threatening to burst. What does that mean? I choked out, the words tumbling from my lips. Suddenly, a powerful commotion erupted nearby. People began to shout, voices blending into a dissonant choir of panic. I held onto my father's hand tightly, a lifeline amidst the chaos. In a fleeting moment, my eyes locked onto the vacant gaze of an unfamiliar face emerging from the chaos, a figure I'd never seen before, scanning the room with wide, frantic eyes. And then, as they caught sight of us, the figure froze, a flicker of fear shadowing their face, a chilling premonition that sent an electric shock racing through my veins. This wasn't just about my mother anymore. This was becoming something larger, sinister even. It was as if we had stumbled into a movie with no script, where each moment teetered on the knife's edge of fate. Mom! I cried out, the panic rising again as I felt the fragility of our lives shift dangerously. The walls pressed in, And the question lingered, would we survive whatever lay ahead? And would I, in the fray of it all, be able to hold on to those I loved, or would we be lost in the storm? The lights flickered again, and for a second, the ward felt like a scene twisted straight out of a horror film. Panic wrapped itself tightly around my throat, making it hard to breathe. I jerked my head, searching for glimpses of hope among the chaos. The familiar faces of the medical staff now seemed distant, their confidence flickering with the lights that threatened to dim again. I could feel my father's grip on my hand tighten, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through him. "Stay close," he murmured, his voice barely carrying over the rising noise. I nodded, feeling a mixture of comfort and helplessness in such proximity. In that moment we were tethered by fear, but how long could that last? When the automated announcement echoed through the ward again, it felt like a knife being twisted deeper into an already open wound. I struggled to contain the avalanche of emotion swelling in my chest. "Lockdown," I repeated, each syllable heavy with dread. A strange sense of helplessness swept over me as I turned my gaze back to my mother. The bed beside her had been left unattended, the equipment now buzzing ominously, their beeping almost mocking in the context of our escalating chaos. "We need to make sure she's okay." I choked out, my throat raw. "I'm calling for the nurse," my father stated, attempting to navigate the density of panic around us. I reached out to stop him, not wanting him to leave my side, but he shrugged off my hand, his resolve ignited by desperation. "Stay here, please." I heard the timid plea in his voice, a stark contrast to the bravado he'd always managed to uphold. The moments stretched painfully, seconds ballooning into what felt like hours. My eyes flicked around the ward, grasping at the faces of nurses and doctors. Some were focused on their work, others whispered to one another, their expressions betraying more than they knew how to express. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Maybe our situation was worse than I dared to contemplate. And in that moment of vulnerability, I caught the unfamiliar face again, the same lost gaze that had trapped me earlier, radiating an unspoken fear I could almost taste. They were flitting through the crowd, their lips pressed together tightly as they muttered to themselves. I couldn't help but wonder if they felt the same weight of fate pressing down on them as we did. But before I could process the connection, they disappeared again, swallowed by the torrent of frantic activity. Just then, a male nurse unfurled from the chaos and approached. Despite the shadows of turmoil dancing in his eyes, his intent was resolute. "We need everyone to stay calm," he directed, though it felt more like a plea than a command. "Please remain in your area. We'll keep you posted about any updates." As he turned to leave, I felt propelled by a sudden impulse. "Wait, is my mother okay? What is happening?" My voice rose, echoing the growing tempest within me. He paused, his brows knit with concern. "We're doing everything we can. The doctors are working on your mother right now. She's stable for the moment." The word stable hung in the air, a flimsy thread of comfort, but I clung to it desperately. Just as he turned away again, I spotted my father returning, his hands empty. "I couldn't find anyone." "The place is a maze," he admitted, his face betraying the turmoil within him. The thought of losing my mother gripped my heart, squeezing so tightly it felt like an echo threatening to drown me. "Mom needs us," I exclaimed, unwilling to let this moment of uncertainty wrap us in its despairing darkness. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared through the emergency room, its urgency drowning out all other sounds, sending my heart racing anew. The automatic doors bolted shut with a menacing thud, sealing us in like unwelcome visitors to a horror show. "What's going on?" I cried, my voice choked with a mix of panic and confusion. "Stay back," someone shouted, their voice cutting through the sharp atmosphere, directing those closer to the exit to move away. I felt compression in my chest as my father held me firmly, our eyes darting between the assemblage of worried nurses and doctors, each one consumed by an invisible urgency that transcended the madness around us. Then, something unexpected happened. A doctor, her brow furrowed with concern, emerged from the corner of my vision. Her strides were purposeful as she approached, but the anxiety brimming in her eyes sent chills cascading down my spine. In a tone weighted with unsteady authority, she directed the vicinity to step back, her voice cutting through the tumult like a lighthouse guiding us through the fog. "Medical emergency." We are securing the area for a potential lockdown for safety measures. Please remain calm, she announced. Those words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Time slowed, as if the world had stopped around us. I couldn't grasp what potential dangers threatened us now. But my heart raced with the anticipation of something unknown and menacing. "Mom," I gasped, suddenly feeling an insufferable wave of dread wash over me. What if she needed me and I couldn't reach her? What if I would never feel her warm embrace again? Never hear her calming voice? Would all the moments we shared be haunted by this very moment? My stomach twisted as the fear unveiled itself. Was this where our hope was destined to shatter? I choked back a sob, searching for any sign, any shred of connection with her, but the chaos closed in around us like storm clouds swallowing the sun. Then out of it, a figure stepped forward, a young woman with curly hair, sweat glistening along her brow. "The child in room 3, they need you," she pleaded, urgency erupting in her tone. The word child sliced through the noise and resonated deep within me. "What do you mean?" I asked, heart pounding as 1,000 questions raced through my mind. "We have a situation more than we anticipated," she said hoarsely before she was interrupted by a wave of bustling nurses darting toward a separate wing of the ward. Fear rippled through me like a tidal wave. Wait. No. What does that mean for my mom? Where are they taking her? I shouted into the fray, my voice caught in a whirlwind of devastation. But the woman was gone, and the walls began to shake with the uncertainty of the unfolding drama. I looked at my father, pleading silently for reassurance, but all I could see was the echo of his own held breath, a reflection of the wild storm raging inside both of us. Just as the chaos reached a fever pitch, the lights flickered again, the sirens growing louder in my ears. And amid the thunderous cacophony, a GPU monitor set against the far wall blinked, and letters began to unfold, blinking in unsettling rhythm. "Evacuation imminent." My heart plummeted. The very ground beneath our feet felt like quicksand, dragging us into a sense of helplessness. The moment I had dreaded was drawing near, and as I searched desperately for my mother, I knew in my soul, the true storm had yet to arrive. The weight of the flashing letters felt like a cruel twist of fate. My breath hitched in my throat. Each word seemed to ignite a new wave of terror. Evacuation imminent. I grasped my father's arm, our connection a fragile lifeline against the tempest of emotions swirling around us. "Dad, we have to find her. We can't just leave," I implored, desperation creeping into my voice. He turned to me, his eyes glazed but raw with emotion, searching for a flicker of certainty in the storm that had engulfed us. "We will, I promise," he choked out, his voice breaking under the weight of his assurances. But even as he whispered, alarms punctuated the air, drowning our resolve in their shrill urgency. Moments felt like hours as we scanned the frantic staff rushing around us. Then that unsettling face that lost gaze for moments before caught my attention again. They were back, standing near the nurse's station with wide eyes. In that instant, our eyes met and a strange understanding passed between us, as if we were tethered by a shared fear neither of us could put into words. Before I could approach, the figure began moving closer, urgently whispering to one of the nurses. I couldn't hear them over the chaos, but I watched as the nurse's expression shifted from concern to alarm. All at once, I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to bridge the silence of our shared dread. "Are you okay?" I called out, the question spilling from my lips without me thinking. The lost gaze turned sharply toward me, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of connection, a shared bond of vulnerability, sparked in the troubling environment. They began, voice trembling before a loud siren blared, interrupting their sentence. My heart pounded painfully in my chest, drowning out their words, as the echo of impending evacuation grew louder, that we were running out of time, and the frantic shuffle of feet echoed around us as people began moving inexplicably, waves of fear washing over them. My father's grip tightened, grounding me, yet I felt a strange pull towards the unfamiliar. Suddenly, someone else emerged from the shadows, a petite woman, her scrubs crumpled but still professional, whether by choice or necessity I couldn't tell. She rushed up to the nurse and immediately began to coordinate, barking instructions like a commander assembling troops for the unknown battle ahead. "Secure the exits. We cannot lose anyone else," she demanded, urgency lacing her every word. My heart wrenched at the implication. The panic flooding the atmosphere was palpable, and I was left with the sinking realization that whoever or whatever had triggered this chaos had not only harmed my mother. "Hey!" I shouted, hoping to grab her attention, my voice raw from the relentless fear bombarding every part of me. "What's going on? Is there something we should worry about?" She turned to me, her eyes sharp but softened by something, perhaps empathy, perhaps shared fear. "I can't say much right now, but I need you to be with your family. Stay together, and don't move away from the ward for any reason. There is a lot happening more than you know." Her words lingered, a bittersweet cocktail of fear and concern. "I just need to find my mom," I replied, the desperation spilling over as tears threatened to spill down my cheeks. I felt so vulnerable, so utterly out of control. The woman's expression hardened momentarily, then she softened. "I understand. We're doing everything we can. Just hold tight to hope. Sometimes it's all we have." As she rushed away, I turned back to my father. "We can't leave her. We have to get to her," I implored, desperation bubbling once more. But the alarm continued blaring, breaking through my thoughts like a hammer on glass. Then, as if pulled by an unseen force, I turned back toward the frantic woman who had caught my gaze moments before. "Please," I called out. "What's your name?" She hesitated as uncertainty flickered in her eyes before she took a hesitant step closer. "Annie," she said, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "Annie Tompkins. I was in a similar position a few years ago. I know how hard it is to be here." "Annie," I repeated, the name grounding me against the chaotic whirl of emotions threatening to pour over. I'm Lily. My mom." "I know," she nodded, empathy mirroring in her eyes that reflected my fears. "Stay close to your dad." And though those words wordlessly reassured me, the underlying ignorance of our plight loomed large. But something about Annie felt different, almost comforting against the backdrop of dread. As we stood together, a momentary stillness settled in the surrounding chaos. But just then, a loud crash erupted from behind a closed door, an explosion of sound so unsettling it froze the very air around us. The lights flickered again, struggling under the weight of the panic-riddled atmosphere, leaving us dimmed in uncertainty. "Oh God! What now?" My heart hammered violently, each pulse laced with fear for my mother, for everyone around me. "Stay back." A voice called again, this time deeper, reverberating with authority wrapped in palpable tension. I blinked, terrified as shadows moved behind the glass, and panic erupted anew in my chest. Turning to my heart raced. What was happening? Were we secure? Or was this a harbinger of something darker yet to come? Suddenly, the door swung open, and a group of doctors at the threshold looked frantic, urgency charging their faces. With an ashen look, the first doctor to step through shouted, "We need immediate assistance here. I repeat, have everyone evacuate to the designated safe zones." And with those words, a new wave of confusion crashed over me, pinning my hopes and fears in a crash. The flickering lights felt alive with dread, and the storm inside me told me this was only the beginning. The world around me had become nothing but a cacophony of fear, confusion, and chaos. As the alarms blared, they mixed with shouts and hurried footsteps of the medical staff racing by me, each sound pounding in my chest like a war drum. I felt as though I was standing in the eye of a hurricane. Before me lay a tumult of emotions and primal instincts, while behind me, the supportive hand of my father grasped tightly, grounding me to a reality that felt fraying at its seams. "My mom," I cried out again, desperation flooding me. Where was she? Who was with her? How could I fight through this storm to reach her? The panic clawing at my insides felt all-consuming, and yet I remained rooted to the spot, held captive by my fear. Annie, the nurse, darted past me, her expression one of steely determination mixed with urgency. My eyes followed her, pleading silently for reassurance, for a lifeline in this maelstrom. It felt as though the ground beneath my feet had begun to shift, every heartbeat a prayer that I could still find my mother. "Lily!" Annie shouted as she bounded back toward us, sweat glistening on her brow. "Stay close to your dad. The last thing you want is to get lost in all this chaos. Trust me." My father tightened his grip on my shoulder, his face wrinkling in concern, in solidarity, but even his composure was cracking under the pressure. "We need to stay together," he urged, each word heavy with the weight of his realization that we were in this together now, no matter the past. And then like a shot to the heart a security team rushed through the doors, their presence heralded by the tension hanging in the air like an unyielding storm cloud. It left a trail of whispered prayers and hesitant gasps in its wake. They were faces of authority, faces that brought both comfort and fear. "Everyone, please remain calm," one of the officers commanded, their voice echoing off the sterile walls, but it only deepened the rising tension, sending shivers crawling down my spine. "Get everyone to safety," another voice shouted, a sense of urgency in the tone that made the pit in my stomach widen. I began to shake, fear rippling through me. What had happened that warranted this evacuation? "Is it safe?" I asked my father, my voice trembling with vulnerability. His brow furrowed, thoughts racing behind those irises filled with worry. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving," he said, leading me to follow Annie as she directed the flow of people towards the exit. "Where's my mom? She needs me. I can't leave without her." My words flew out in panicked breaths, an urgency building inside the fire of belonging and loss illuminating what was at stake. My mother, as fragile as she was, could be thrust into one of the most sinister storms, and I felt overwhelming dread creep up my spine. My heart pounded with an insatiable ache to get to her. While Annie shoved her way through nurses redirecting frantic families, my father said, "I'll find a way to get to her." His voice steadied me, igniting a flicker of determination. But in that moment, the lights flashed again, then flickered once more, and darkness swallowed the room momentarily. Gasps filled the air, and I felt my father grasp my shoulders, anchoring me. It seemed like my world was falling apart even as I stood still. "Hold on to me," he shouted through the unsettling silence that followed. Just as quickly as it started, the lights flicked back on, but when they did, I saw something that made my heart drop. A flurry of movement by another door, panic rising like smoke in a fire. I squished my eyes shut for a moment, forcing tears of rage and helplessness back. "Mom!" I cried as I felt the world warping around me, emotions tumbling through my veins like a raging torrent. Then from that chaos, a familiar silhouette emerged, the figure of my mother being wheeled out, the monitor nearby beeping steadily. But she wasn't just being taken away to safety. They were moving her to a different section, her frail hand clutching desperately to the edge of the blanket that cloaked her. In that moment, everything I thought I knew turned into a nightmare. "Mom!" I bolted forward, breaking free from my father's grasp, instinctively racing to her side, but an orderly stepped in my way. "You can't," he said, holding a palm up, and for a split second, I felt a mixture of rage and anguish stir within me. "Please. I have to, Lily." My father's voice cut through the fog of panic. "Trust the doctors. Please stay here. She's in good hands." But those words felt like nails, digging deeper into my heart. I was torn between my impulsive longing to reach out for the only semblance of support I knew and the burdensome realization that I was powerless in this moment, one single moment, that felt like it could stretch into eternity. That as I watched them roll her away, the terror flooded back in waves. I could see her face now, pained, as though she were fighting against the very act of being moved, fear glimmering in her eyes as our souls collided across that space. "Mom!" I screamed one last time, desperation clawing at my throat. In that instant, the world fell silent. Everything else faded away, and it was just me, my mother, and the fragile thread that tethered us. "I'll fight for you," I declared vehemently, hoping my words would reach her, even through the distance. "I promise. I love you." The softest, faintest smile cracked through her pained features, and her eyes sparkled for the briefest moment. "You're my fighter, sweetheart," she whispered, and in that instant, I felt her spirit tether to mine, our connection a life raft in this storm. But reality crashed back in an empty corridor looming where I longed to run. I felt my father's hand find mine again, a lifeline I couldn't fully grasp, but it murmured a promise of unity amidst things unknown, of grief and hope intermingling like a dance along a precipice. Annie rushed back toward us. "We need to go. They're evacuating this area. There's too much uncertainty here." Her rallying cry snapped me back to the reality stacked around me, a reality where fear can be weaponized, and safety can become an illusion. Is my mom okay? I stammered, clinging to the hope that burned my heart. She will be. I promise. At that moment, we all understood what was necessary. As the swirl of chaos threatened to consume us, we held on tightly to one another. That connection, fragile yet unwavering, would carry us across the storm and deliver us to the shores of unity I had almost forgotten existed. That I took a deep breath, letting it fill the cracks of fear that threatened to swallow me whole. In that moment, I wasn't just a daughter hoping for my mother's safety. I was a daughter declaring that love would triumph against the storm, that hope would illuminate the path ahead. That as we headed toward the exits, voices biting with urgency blended into the howls of uncertainty around us. But every step was laden with a mantra born from love. We will fight. Together. And as I glanced back one last time, my heart thundering with the weight of possibility, I heard my mother's voice whisper like the wind through oranges trees, "Keep fighting, sweetheart. You've got this." I carried that mantra forward as we stepped out into the uncharted territory beyond, a space where family collided fiercely against the wind, ready to reach for the stars no matter the weight of the world against us. In that moment, I realized that love is a bridge, forged in the flames of struggle, and it would guide us home, no matter how complicated the journey. We would emerge from the shelter of darkness and ride into a new dawn on the horizon. Life, after all, was a tapestry of threads woven with the truths we cling to, and right then, I clung fiercely to hope, family, and my boundless love.